more highly of oneself than one does of others. For example, one may be uneducated and yet say things like, "What do people with education know anyway? What good does it do them? I've never studied, but look at me. There's good food on my table and I've got plenty of money in my pocket." That is being conceited. One feels one's own value surpasses that of other people. 8 is harming. With this affliction one wants to harm others. One of the 11 wholesome dharmas was non-harming. This affliction is the exact opposite of the good dharma.
9 is jealousy. This affliction occurs when one becomes envious of those who surpass one in some way or other. For example, someone may be endowed with an excellent memory. Because of this, one becomes jealous of that person thinking, if only that person weren't around, then I would be number one. As long as he's here I don't get to be first. That is jealousy. Or one may get jealous of someone with a higher level of education than one possesses, and end up thinking the same kind of thought, as long as that person is around, I can't be number one. Without that person, I would be the most highly educated one here. Being jealous of anyone who surpasses one in any way is included in the definition of this affliction. 10 is stinginess. With this affliction, one is tight with one's benefits, not wishing to share them with others. One is unable to give anything away. For instance, if a stingy person has money and it is suggested he part with some of it, he simply cannot bring himself to do so. He hangs on to that money, squeezing every penny of it so tightly that it turns to liquid and melts away in his palm. Then he wonders where it went. The pigeons were no doubt stingy in past lives in addition to being greedy. They could not give up their possessions, so now they must endure the retribution of always having to sponge off others. They do not have anything of their own. If you suggested to a pigeon that it give anything away, it would not be able to do it. Those are the 10 minor grade derivative afflictions. Next are the 2 intermediate grade derivative afflictions.
11 is lack of remorse. One of the 11 wholesome dharmas is remorse, and so this affliction is its opposite. One who lacks remorse always feels self-righteous. One assumes one is entitled to do whatever one wishes. One considers oneself a special person, an exceptional individual. Those who call themselves extraordinary simply have no sense of remorse. They lack a feeling of repentance. 12 is lack of shame. One who lacks shame never really examines whether or not one is up to the standards of others. One never feels that what one does might not be on a par with what others do, nor does one fear ridicule or reprisal. One has no concern for public opinion and feels no sense of embarrassment even when the things one does are in fact mean and lowly. Such a person lacks the feeling of shame. Last, we will look at the 8 major grade derivative afflictions. 13 is lack of faith. Among the 11 wholesome dharmas was faith. This affliction is the exact opposite. One does not believe in anyone. One does not trust one's teacher or anyone else. If the teacher lacks faith, he does not trust his disciples. If the disciples lack faith, they do not trust the teacher. A son who lacks faith will not trust even his father, and a father who lacks faith will not believe his son, much less need we mention siblings. Brothers and sisters who lack faith will not believe in each other. Their attitude will be, "How can you expect me to trust you? You should believe in me."
When one gets to the point of thinking that others should believe in one, always convinced that one is quite great, then no matter what others tell one, one will doubt its validity. If one speaks the dharma for a person who lacks faith, the reaction will be, "That's just a bunch of phony words, it's all false. You call that dharma? What kind of dharma, anyway? You're just trying to trick us." That is the attitude of one who lacks faith. But actually that is not so far off, for when I speak the dharma, there is not a single bit of truth in it. You should not listen to it. In fact, you should run away really fast. An example is the person outside the door who stated clearly, "I'm an outsider," and upon being asked to come in, ran away. That is lack of faith. 14 is laziness. This affliction is the exact opposite of vigor. It is being actively non-vigorous. It is another name for indolence. 15 is laxness. Another of the 11 wholesome dharmas was non-laxness. This affliction is its opposite. It means one does not follow the rules but does whatever one pleases. It is akin to the freedom or independence that Americans advocate. When that concept is carried too far, it results in laxness. Laxness means not obeying one's parents, but proceeding to do exactly what one wants. This particular affliction is a major reason why it is such a headache teaching Americans. You laugh, but it is true. 16 is torpor. This is the affliction of wanting to nod off during the sutra lectures. In fact, it does not matter what one is doing, with this affliction, one wants to fall asleep in the process. Reading a sutra, one wants to fall asleep. Bowing to the Buddhas, one wants to nod off. While translating sutras, one has the urge to sleep. Listening to the sutra lectures, one is even less willing to stay awake. Torpor is another name for sleepiness.
However, torpor is different from foolishness. Foolishness is a general darkness and lack of clarity, an inability to understand what is going on. Torpor is a dreamlike, foggy state of mind in which one is oblivious to what is going on around one. One is sitting there, and suddenly everything goes blank. One cannot remember anything that has been happening. Listening to sutras, one suddenly cannot remember anything that was just said. It is like being in a dream and yet is not actually dreaming. It is what is described in the verse, if one who is deluded transmits it to another, after all is said and done, neither one understands. The teacher falls into the hells, and the disciple burrows in after him. 17 is restlessness. With this affliction, one is agitated and cannot keep still, like the demon king who came here the other day. One is unable to manage the cultivation of calm, pure states. One runs around aimlessly and chaotically. Sitting, one gets restless and decides to stand standing, one gets agitated and decides to sit. Walking, one starts out going north and ends up headed south, or starts out east and ends up going west. One is all over the place, unable to settle down. That is what happens to the body.
One's mouth is just as chaotic. Saying whatever one pleases, one runs off at the mouth, like that demon king that day, full of chaotic and confusing talk. Restlessness also affects the mind. One does a tremendous amount of uncontrolled thinking. One thought replaces the next in an aimless wandering that goes off on tangents and cannot stick to the point. One starts out thinking about one thing, and ends up thinking about something entirely different. One's thinking enters never land, and starts to fantasize wildly. I ascended to the heavens where a god told me that in 3 days I'd get reborn in the heavens. Now did that really happen? One thinks about things one has no business thinking about. I went to a certain place in meditation and ended up suspended in empty space. Did that really happen? Or will it happen? The mind becomes tangled in chaos as one contrives all kinds of non-existent experiences. See how pathetic this restlessness is? 18 is distraction. With this affliction one loses proper mindfulness, and is only mindful of